And he, Jesus, said, I am the resurrection and the life. If any believe in me, they shall never die. Then we see Mary say the exact same thing. Lord, had you been here, my brother would not have perished. Now we're going to see all those that doubted at the grave of Lazarus and beyond. John 11:37. And some of them said, could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus did not come immediately to Lazarus' aid when he found out he was sick. Jesus, who healed so many thousands, he waited. There was a reason for the wait, because this is a bigger lesson for them to have learned. He came into town after Lazarus had died, and he talked to Mary and Martha, heard their pain, he heard their concern, he heard their abject despair. Then he says, where have they laid Lazarus? And upon approaching, the people around the grave saw him. They knew him, and they questioned him for not being there and healing Lazarus. Jesus, just like us, has to deal with what if. If only, and why me, Lord? Why am I going through this? Jesus had to deal with this. These people were questioning him and they were asking. He deals with it from us enough nowadays. Why did this person die? Why is that person alive and this one is not? Why did this happen to me and not to them? Here in the physical, when Jesus is walking this earth, he has to deal with that. All the people at the graves, they've seen his miracles. They've heard of his power. They knew. Yet, they thought maybe it was a fluke, for he didn't come in time to heal this man whom he loved, this man who was dear to him, this family that was dear to him. Or perhaps he couldn't have healed him had he been here. Jesus is dealing with despair, misery, doubt, people questioning him, his purposes, his reasoning, and his power. Jesus, groaning within himself, he's tired of the doubts, the lack of faith. He's seeing the pain. And he hears them questioning him. The fickleness of people who had seen him do mighty works, many mighty works. And they doubt now as to whether or not he can do it. Or they start wondering why he didn't do it, and they're taking it for granted that he should have. These people said, could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died? They're not questioning his power. They're questioning him as to why he didn't do it. However, and we don't talk about this often enough, there are real troublemakers in the crowd. There are people in the crowd trying to cast aspersions on his name. Jesus is being questioned by the very people who refuse to believe. who refused to see him as the Messiah, who refused to see him as from God. And some of these people are the ones who are accusing him of being from Beelzebub. So imagine everywhere you go being questioned and doubted. You do mighty works and you're questioned. And then you don't get there fast enough and you're questioned as to why weren't you here? Unable to work for the good of the people because these men did not want to give up their power and their prestige. They did not just ignore him. They refused to see. They refused to believe. We often talk of them as being unbelievers. They were not just unbelievers. They were active deniers. Of course, we're talking about the religious elite. So Jesus coming upon this grave is dealing with all of this. Martha and Mary saying, if you were here, he had been healed. Other people saying, could not this man have healed him had he been here? So they're questioning the very purpose, the decision-making process of Jesus. There are others who are just doubting him altogether. So Jesus gets to the grave in John 11:38. Jesus, therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Pretty good a description. It wasn't a hole that was dug. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Kind of like the one he's going to be in here not before too much longer. So Jesus, therefore, again, groaning in himself, Jesus said, take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days. Jesus saith unto her, said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldst believe, thou shouldst see the glory of God? Jesus says, he gets to the grave. The stone is laid over the grave. Now, remember, Jesus was put into a grave. The stone was sealed and a guard was set. Here, the stone was just laid over the cave. They just had to move it. And Martha says, Lord, his body has started to decay and rot, and he stinks. He's been dead 4 days. The stench of death is upon him. And Jesus said I not unto thee, if thou wouldst believe, thou shouldst see the glory of God. This is a lesson, teacher, for these people. She thought, however, as most of us do, that at death, it's over. It's done. Once you die, there is no more on this earth. We know this, right? Martha did not truly believe Jesus could raise Lazarus. She knew that death was final. But in her defense, I can't say as I blame her. I too, in that day or in this day, would have done the same. For there was never an instance of anything other than death being final that they had ever heard of. When was the last time you heard of someone being in the grave for 4 days and coming back from the dead? I probably wouldn't have believed, just like Martha didn't believe, because death was the end. That was it. It was final. John 11:41. But then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, he's praying out loud here, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I know that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, loose him, and let him go. Did you see what Jesus' prayer was? Did you see he's talking to God, but he's telling them? He's talking to God, but he's conveying a message to them. He said, I know that you hear me always, but I thanked you for hearing me so that they might know. He's praying to God out loud that they might know what he already knows. And what he's saying is, Lord, thank you for hearing me. I'm speaking to these people that they might believe that you sent me. And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. Why the loud voice? Some have said that he named Lazarus so that not all the dead came forth, and that's legitimate. The Creator called them forth. They were going to come out. When he died, they rose again, dead seen throughout the city of Jerusalem. Why the loud voice? That the doubters might know that this was no fluke. That the doubters might know this was no hokum. And that Lazarus was dead with grave clothes covering his ears and in a cave. In a cave. Muffled sound reaching in. Jesus spoke in a loud voice, not for Lazarus, for the people listening, so they would know he came forth on the command of Jesus. The dead man rose, came out of the cave. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed on him. He raised a man from the dead. Of course they're going to believe. That had never been done in the history of mankind. Some of them believed on him. But John 11:46. But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. Let's read that again. Let's go back to 11:45. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed on him. But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. Now, I don't think that they went and said, oh, look what he did. What are you going to do? I think they went and they told the Pharisees that this man had raised the other one from the dead. And in awe and the wonder, they filled in the religious elites. But here's where the nefarious part kicks in. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council, and said, "What do we? For this man doeth many miracles." In secret, they acknowledged the miracles. Amongst themselves, they wonder, they question. They even hold him in a bit of awe. When they all gather together, they worry, they conspire, where the people cannot hear and disapprove. The people had just seen a mighty work of God. All the doubters have been silenced. A man was raised from the dead by one that they have been denying, by one they have been actively persecuting and questioning and working against. And he raised a man from the dead. In secret, they say, "What are we going to do? This man is doing many miracles." John 11:48. "If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him. And the Romans shall come away and take both our place and our nation." Jesus has done many miracles. He has told them he is from God. They acknowledge the miracles. They acknowledge the power. But 11:48 tells you exactly what the Pharisees, the chief priests, are worried about. That if we leave him alone, Jesus, and we don't persecute him, if we don't stop him, all will believe on him. And the Romans shall come and take away our place. That means their power, their position, their authority, their money, and our nation. The place where they get their money from, where they wield their power and their authority. These men are afraid of giving up their position and their power while Jesus is doing miracles, winning the hearts and the minds of the people, doing God's work. And the Pharisees and the chief priests are only worried about their money, their position, and their power. It has been said time and again, yet many do not believe that the rulers of the people would kill a man just for their power, just for their authority, just for their money. And here we have it actively documented and recorded that that's exactly why they did. Now, next question. How do we know this is accurate? How do we know this was said and done? How do we know that this actually happened, that the chief priests and the Pharisees did this? Remember, Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, when Jesus died on the cross, they went and they took his body and they put it in Joseph's grave. They were in these meetings. They heard and they saw. They reported it to the apostles because they were disciples. How do we know this? John 12:42 says, "Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also many believed on him." The chief priests and the Pharisees, this council that just got together, Among the chief rulers also, many believed on him. They saw the miracles that only God could do, and they believed. But because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him out loud, lest they should be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. That's John 12:42 and John 12:43. Many of the rulers believed on him, but spoke not for fear of the Pharisees. And even then, the few who believed, they didn't want to lose their place. They didn't want to lose their power. They were human too. They could do more from within than they could from without. John 11:53 and John 11:54, just after Lazarus was raised from the dead, just after the chief priests, Pharisees gathered together at council, just after they said, what are we going to do for this man does many miracles? John 11:53, from that day forth, they took counsel together, the chief priests and the Pharisees took counsel together for to put him to death. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went thence unto a country near to the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there continued with his disciples. The high priest, the chief religious officer of his day, is now actively seeking to kill a man who he admitted has done many mighty miracles, raised the dead, healed the lame, gave sight to the blind. And they're going to kill this man, and for what? For his good works, for his testimony, for his witness. It endangers their position. It endangers their authority, and it endangers their money. Now we get to the heart of the matter. This is where we're going to land for just a minute. In another chapter, Jesus will talk of those that want to kill him, and the folks listening will call him mad for saying people want to kill him. Yet here we have, in plain sight, well, for us, they couldn't get into the council, they couldn't read the Bible, they didn't have it yet, but plain sight for us, men gathered together to plot against Jesus. And why do they plot? Why did they doubt? And why did they hate him? The men had their reasons we just discussed, because they were going to lose their place, their money, their authority, their power, their positions, and they were going to lose their nation to the Romans. But Jesus says, that's not why. Jesus, God himself, says this is why. The world cannot hate you because you're of the world. The world cannot hate you, but me it hateth, because I testify of it that the works thereof are evil. They hated Jesus because he shed a light on their motive, on their intent, on their hearts. The world cannot hate you, those of the world, but me, Jesus, it hateth, because I testify of it, meaning he shows the world that the world is evil, and that the works of the world, no matter how good they are evil. The world hates him because the true light of God that Jesus brought showed them their sin, their ungodliness, and their unworthiness. Jesus came that people might know God and have a relationship with him. The Pharisees were dead set against him because he showed them as petty. He showed them as worldly and not worried about the things of God, but the things that put themselves forward. They hated. He raised people from the dead. He gave blind men their sight, caused the deaf to hear, the lame to walk again, and they hated him for it. Because they were afraid that all men would come to believe on him, and Rome would take note and would take everything away from the nation and from these men. They hated him. And he warned us that they will hate us too if we are following him. If we are following him as intended, then we are going to show the world their sin as he did, their unworthiness as he did, and the God who is holy, just, righteous, and pure. If the world hates you, you know it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. The world hated him. The world killed him for showing their sin and inadequacy. The Pharisees, the priests, the religious elite persecuted and killed him. Now, we know he laid down on his life on the cross. He gave up his life. They didn't take it from him. But in their eyes, they killed him because he made their positions tenuous. He threatened their power, their authority, and their money. The world hated him because they cared not for the things of God, but for the things of this world. They killed him for showing their sin and inadequacy. And you know what's even more wrong in this whole thing? Lazarus, who was raised from the dead, when they conspired to kill Jesus, they conspired to kill Lazarus too. Because they said that as long as Lazarus is alive, he is a testimony to what Jesus did. Lazarus had to die too to get all the evidence out of the way. And then they could treat it as just a rumor. The religious elite, the Pharisees, were more worried about their money and their power. At the grave, nothing but doubt. Jesus dealt with so much while he was here. Everybody thinks, oh, he just walked blithely along and healed here and healed. No. He fought doubt and fear and unbelief every inch of every step he took. Among those closest to him, constant doubt and fear. How do you think it's going to be even less for us? It's not. It's going to be even more for us because we're not Jesus. We can't just glide through. It's going to be harder for us. Does the world hate you? Can they tell you are different? Do you show them their need for a righteous God? their need to be redeemed. The world pays no attention to you. If the world does not hate you, if it does not see you as a threat to their sin, to their power, to their money, to their authority, then perhaps you ought to be asking why. For as he says, it will hate us as it hated him, for we are of him. If it does not hate us, are we of him? Jesus went through so much we never talk about. The fear, the doubt, the unbelief, persecution every step of the way. Everything he said was twisted and turned to try to forestall his testimony. When he walked up to Mary and Martha's, they should have been so relieved to see him. Jesus is here. He's going to make it better. And instead, where were you at? Why weren't you here before this? Why did you let him die? All the way to the grave. If he had been here, he could have healed him. He wasn't here. Why wasn't he here? And then when he did heal him, did raise him from the dead, did bring him back to life, did restore him back to his family, the Pharisees and the chief priests conspired to kill him instead of celebrating. Jesus fought so hard. Everything he did was just picked at. And then we expect to have such an easy life here, claiming we're serving him? Jesus was in a whole group of doubters, a whole world of doubters. Why do we think we're going to have it any easier?